Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here today as we have our second webinar by the Center for Faith here at the Department of Health and Human Services. We're calling this webinar Taking Big First Steps, because that's what the administration's doing as we encourage early education opportunities with faith communities. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you taking time out of your day to join us and to look at some of the ways the administration is really encouraging working with faith and community-based groups across the country in this work. My name is Ben Odell. I'm serving as the acting director here in the center. And the mission of the office, as set out by President Trump, is to really facilitate engagement and connection with faith and community-based leaders like yourselves in the key work of addressing families, children, and communities. And so we're so glad we have you all as partners in those efforts. This is our second webinar, so I want to make sure you know that President Trump relaunched these offices on February 7th. He renamed us as the Center for Faith. And we work alongside the White House Faith Office, led by Pastor Paula White and Director Jenny Korn. And through that executive order, it outlines some of the work that we are tasked with, including strengthening families and addressing and enhancing the health and well-being for all Americans. We know that one way faith and community-based groups do strengthen families is providing childcare in their local communities. That's because so many houses of worship have space dedicated to serving children during their weekly gatherings. They provide that childcare. They have childcare workers. They have people and individuals who are knowledgeable about some of these spaces. And while that space is needed on the weekends, houses of worship can and do use that space during the week to provide childcare services and help so many families prepare their children for K through 12 education. And so by doing that, we also know that empowers so many families to also have the opportunity to work and address the needs of their family in a variety of circumstances and situations, supporting and facilitating their self-sufficiency. So this is such a critical need. It's such a critical resource, and it leverages an asset that so many faith communities have. We also know that people of faith care deeply about the education and educational options they have to address the growth and development of their children. And that's why we're so excited to welcome guests here today to help us think about the ways that faith and community-based leaders can be in part of this conversation and connect to the steps that President Trump and his administration are taking to expand educational freedom and opportunity so that we can provide the best educational opportunities for our children, all our children across the lifespan. A leader in this work that we're so glad to have with us is Hannah Earl, who's serving as the director for the Center for Faith at the Department of Education. She's the former executive director for America's Future, where she cultivated communities of freedom-minded young professionals and local leaders. We've asked Hannah here today to describe the president's executive order on expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families, and how that drives her work on educational freedom at the Department of Education. So Hannah, thanks so much for being with us, and I'm glad to turn the floor over to you.
Thanks so much, Ben. I have been looking so forward to this, to connecting with this audience, because we have so much going on at the Department of Education, as you can imagine. And I want to preface what I'm saying by the fact that I encourage you, please reach out to me if you have further questions. I can direct you to my colleagues, but I really do want to direct you in a broad sense at what's happening, because since the inauguration, since this administration, we have really we're looking at everything to maximize, as Ben said, educational choice, educational freedom for families. And so as I'm the director of the Center for Faith, as Ben said, my priorities are a little bit different than other faith directors. Ben alluded to the fact that we work with the White House Faith Office. At the Department of Education, my priorities are faith-based schools, as you can imagine, because as you may or may not know, over roughly three quarters of private K through 12 schools in this country are faith-based. And I think that's absolutely extraordinary. And it means that changes to education more broadly are of particular relevance to those faith-based communities, especially as we look toward our final mission, which has been described by President Trump and our secretary, which is ultimately shuttering the department, and what that means for states and what that means for faith leaders in those states. So we've been doing quite a bit of work. So my role as the faith director, as I said, my priorities and my stakeholders are baked in because of because of our culture in this country of religious education. And of course, there is quite a lot of activity surrounding faith-based education, everything from the Supreme Court to executive orders. And as I think have been communicated through all of these things, our goal is to make education more free and to empower parents and families with additional choice, recognizing that one size does not fit all when it comes to education and that families have different needs. And of course, my role is making sure that our faith-based stakeholders, that their opinions are heard, that they have a voice at the table when we're thinking about policy, because so much is under review as we look toward making everything more efficient and more freedom focused. So that is a broad view of the work that I do. I'm focused on empowering families. I'm focused on protecting religious freedom for students and also our religious institutions. And as I said, making sure that our faith-based leaders have a role in policy formation. So I'm going to go over some very high-level changes that you may have seen and heard about in the press. I want to encourage you to look at the department website because our comms team does an amazing job of releasing press releases, our dear colleague letters. So everything that I'm going to review very quickly, you can find much more information about online. And I strongly encourage you to do that through the Department of Education website. So a few things that I do want to mention that is of course, particular relevance to faith-based schools. First of all, since we're having this conversation where we are, the Big Beautiful Bill had several changes relating to education, including what has been described as a universal school choice. I encourage you to look at that section of the bill. It incentivizes scholarship funds. The very basic distilled version is that $1,700 of scholarship funds for individual students for states that opt in. So states can opt in to this program to take part in what is essentially the first federal school choice program. So again, that depending on where you are in the country, whether your state opts in, if you have those relationships with legislators, that is certainly a conversation topic that needs to be had, because again, this is coming down the pipeline rather quickly. And again, I would really encourage you to look at the final version of that. I know it went through several versions in the House and the Senate, but that could be very transformative for your state and your community with regard to an education choice. So I did want to be clear about that is very much newsworthy as well, in addition to the other broad stroke items that I will mention. Something that is relevant to your communities as well is the increase in charter funds. The department has increased charter school grants by, I believe, $60 million. This has been, you can read more about this online, of course. This has been a request from that community. Some of those competitions are open, some of them have changed. So if you are in a charter school community as well, that is something to look at. So, like I said, some have closed, some are still in process, but that's a major change that has come recently. Another change that has been at the state level that the department has issued is the definition of unsafe schools. States are required to have a definition and a process for deeming a school unsafe. And that will be that I think will be at the forefront of a lot of state leaders, state leaders as we move forward with all the other changes that we're making at the department. So I encourage you to look at that as well, because there is a process by which students and families have options if they are in an unsafe school by that definition and that process. So that is another recent change. I have so many notes. I want to make sure that we are. And finally, the changes in Title I flexibility. Those are, there is more flexibility in how those funds will be disseminated at the state level. And again, I encourage you to look up the department's guidance on that. But those are some very broad stroke changes at the macro level that are all under this mandate to make education more free and to enable parents and children with more choices. I believe I'm almost at my time.
Well, Hannah, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for the leadership you're having there at the Department of Education and coordinating with faith-based schools, faith-based efforts, and making sure that these options and flexibilities are available to more families, and then coordinating these changes through the bill and so many other spaces that's really facilitating some of these options. So much I know. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
I want to say we are at such an incredible moment right now in education freedom. There's almost too much to talk about. Like I said, I have several pages of recent notes of things that we are doing. But I think at a macro level, this is a transformative moment in American education with the leadership of President Trump, and faith-based communities will be at the forefront of it. So, for example, the charter school changes, those are not necessarily tied to faith-based issues, but they are enabling greater choice. And it is the culmination of 50 and 60 years of work toward the school choice movement that we've just enabled through this big, beautiful bill. And it will be faith-based leaders, because of that percentage that I talked about at the beginning, who are at the forefront of a lot of these changes. But I also want to say that our faith-based schools are really leading in innovation. Every day I talk to faith-based leaders, whether they are principals or whether they're starting private school networks, and they're the ones who are offering students things like work opportunities, internship opportunities. They're pursuing like tech-based learning in ways that other schools aren't. And we want to make sure that those efforts are, of course, recognized and appreciated, and our faith-based communities are really at the forefront of educational excellence in this country. Which is, I think, the American legacy of how we have protected the rights of parents to direct the education of their own children.
Huge, huge. So thanks so much for your leadership on that. So much of what Hannah is doing is coordinated through the president's executive order on educational freedom and opportunity. It really describes some of these outlines, these broad principles and strategies. And one of the ways that HHS is putting that into effect is by thinking through the educational educational opportunities and flexibilities that can be provided as into early education, not just in our K through 12 space, but really in that 0 to 5 range, where we're thinking about all the educational opportunities that lead to successful K through 12 opportunities and efforts. And we know that faith and community-based groups are a key part of that strategy. And so we're so excited to have Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, who's joining us today. Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary in HHS's Health Administration for Children and Families. She's a former public school, elementary and preschool teacher who serves as Child Care Director with experience working in multiple states, including New Mexico, Arizona, and Mississippi. This afternoon, she's going to talk with us about how ACF's guidance works and what it means for faith and community leaders like yourself. So I am so excited to welcome her to this call and for her to have the opportunity to share with you all about how this policy makes a difference and creates opportunity for faith and community leaders like yourself. Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ben, for inviting me to participate in this call. And I appreciate you helping when we had an earlier webinar to talk to the childcare community about these flexibilities. So thank you for having me here. I wanted to start with just touching base on what Hannah shared. I had to laugh when she said 50 years we've been working on school choice, and I'm in my 36th year of working on that. So I feel it's such an amazing time that school choice will now be available in every state in the United States. So I really appreciated that whole conversation and just hearing it, how much of a change that could be. And as she mentioned, this is some of the space I worked in. I've been an elementary school teacher, education policy work for a long time. That new tax credit scholarship that's in the big, beautiful bill will allow individuals in the United States to donate up to $1,700 for local scholarship groups to be able to get a tax credit that's really going to ultimately help more and more families, especially those in need, get access to school choice. So in my long career, it's just so rewarding to see that finally happening for the K-12 system. As Ben mentioned, my background is in teaching and research. I also think it's important to know that I was a policy advisor to a governor in Mississippi for 8 years and really worked on how to help Mississippi families have access to quality childcare and quality services. I've also was appointed in the first Trump administration to lead the Women's Bureau at the U.S. Department of Labor, in which we focused on how to help working women through the COVID crisis and paid family leave policies for children and families, or for families, I guess. And now thrilled to be in my new role as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Early Childhood Development. But I also think this conversation is so important because I am a parent of a grown child now who benefited from a child care center that was located in a faith-based organization in Mississippi over 20 years ago. So the fact that we're now talking to you all, leaders in your states and leaders of churches and communities, there's just such an important role that churches and faith-based organizations play in this helping families. So I think it's also important, before I get too deep into early childhood, in Mississippi, we talk about something called the Mississippi Miracle. And for those of you that aren't aware of it, and back in 2013, only 33% of our children were actually reading proficiently by the age of fourth grade. And we implemented some reforms in the state, and I just would be remiss if I didn't mention a miracle in a faith-based conversation here. At the time, we were 50th in the nation in education, reading scores of children, rankings across all the states. And through those reforms and through the efforts at the community level, state level, not using federal funds to solve this problem, but using our own state wisdom, we were able to move the needle in Mississippi to we are now ranked 9th in the nation in reading scores of fourth graders. And it's now referred to as the Mississippi Miracle, and how we're helping the children most in need that are the hardest to make those gains with. And the untold part of that story are some of the efforts we did in early childhood. So just so you know, starting out, I believe in miracles. I witnessed it firsthand. And I also witnessed the role that parents play in children's lives and those communities and churches supporting those families. So this conversation is just so critical in the future, and how we envision this executive order issued by the Trump administration that we are here to talk about today. So my role at the Administration for Children and Families is really focused on promoting the social and economic well-being of children, families, and communities. Our key priorities are to ensure that families are able to best choose the best early childhood setting that reflects their values and parents' religious beliefs. So we know that religious schools have played a really important role in American education for many, many years, from the beginning of public education. The executive order that was issued on April 29th earlier this year led to my office releasing some guidance on childcare, something called the Child Care Development Fund, CCDF fund, that you'll hear me use today. We're full of acronyms at our office in all of federal government, so I'll give you that warning ahead of time. We issued guidance on TANF, on SSBG, and Head Start programs. And we highlighted in a webinar to a larger community how we could best work with all these programs and what flexibilities are available to communities right now. So I'm going to summarize the childcare part of that guidance and the Head Start part of that guidance, but just know there's more that we can share if those of you on the call are interested at a later time. But for context, the Child Care and Development Grant Fund, the CCDF fund, is for low-income families today to get child care subsidies, either in a voucher or a certificate, where they can choose where to take their child. 96% of those subsidies are provided directly to parents and families. So we are estimating at the closest one I could find in 2019, there's approximately 7,550 faith-based childcare centers nationwide, but only 2,730 of them are currently accepting CCDF vouchers. So we would like to have more participate in this program. And according to the CCDF law, the role of states is to permit parents to choose from a variety of provider types. So that could be a center-based program. It could be a family-based program. It could be relative care, and it could be your faith-based providers. So the new guidance that we issued is really, sort of highlighting and helping states ensure that a range of providers are available to families. So states can use those funds to help churches and other providers that are interested in the program. We can help you meet the health and safety standards and licensing standards at a child care center. If you're a provider right now and you don't currently participate in this program, maybe something I've said already might pique your interest in participating, that we can actually help offset some of the costs involved with providing the care to children and make quality improvements as they're needed. So if you think about a church program, as Ben said, switching their programs now to serve CCDF children, during the week, and then switching it back to a church, I think there's some real cost involved in those, and we can help you mitigate that. I did that work in Mississippi. There was a church in our town that wanted to expand to serve more children and families, and those CCDF funds and even Head Start funds, which I'll get into in a minute, can really help a church to be able to serve those most in need in your community. And that's always been the role of the churches in my eyes and my experiences in the various states. So happy to elaborate more on that as needed at a later time. But the other thing that I know churches are sometimes hesitant about is, right, if we're working with federal funds, now I can't teach the belief and values of my providers, and that's actually not true. CCDF funding can be used for religious purposes and activities as long as the parent is freely choosing to access that care through the voucher program that I mentioned. There's also, the law actually protects faith-based providers when it comes to hiring and allowing you to do what you need to do in your churches and programs as long as the parent is choosing that, which is all about what the law is about. Another piece of guidance that we use the CCDF funds for is homeschooling. And we know that a lot of times parents choose that for their children, and the new guidance that my office issued describes the flexibility that states have to support a family who wants to choose homeschooling. States have the flexibility to define homeschooling teaching and qualifying activities for parents. I think it's important to mention the homeschooling piece. These CCDF funds are for 0 to 5, and those taught not during the hours of public school hours for school age children. So this funds could be can't be used directly for homeschooling for children's enrolled in grades 1 through 12, but homeschooling before the age of 5 and after school care for homeschool students can certainly be included in the flexibilities that we offer. So again, happy to provide more information about how non-core school hours can be used for these CCDF funds, but another way that faith-based organizations can play a role in helping families understand those flexibilities. I'm going to switch right now to Head Start, which provides free learning and development services for our most impoverished children and families in the United States. My office manages 1,600 grantees across the United States and serves over 800,000 children from birth through age 5. In the guidance that we provided, there's 3 key ways that Head Start's programs facilitate school choice. Head Start programs are encouraged to actively participate in state and local efforts to coordinate enrollment and provide a variety of early care and education options available in their state and territories, including tribal nations. Head Start programs are encouraged to work closely with families to determine the program that best meets the parents' needs and the program offerings in their communities. And the part I want to talk about in a little more detail is that programs in your communities right now can re-examine and develop partnerships with Head Starts to support family choices. So if your faith-based organization wanted to partner with a local Head Start center, the program my daughter was able to benefit from was a Head Start partner. That partnership brought funding through the Head Start program to the church program that helped fund the playground, that helped fund a teacher in the program, that helped fund the food program for the church, the faith-based organization that offered that. So there's Head Start partnerships. There's resources on our slides right now that will show you the availability or some links to how you can reach out in your own state to a Head Start collaboration office if that's of interest to you. I think it's an underutilized partnership program in the states that could be expanded and grown to help partner more with faith-based organizations. So I can more details on that, or feel free to reach out to us after this call to help explain more about those Head Start flexibilities. One more thing on Head Start that I just want to point out is that there is a link, and I have learned since I've been in this job that there is professional development for teachers. So I visited a Head Start recently in New Hampshire, and then I visited a church program that was offering childcare. And I was able, and I know it's a lot of money to do childcare for the churches, but Head Start has so many free resources that you could access today that you could use in your childcare if you're offering programs right now, including professional development. If you have a teacher who needs to maybe learn more about how to develop vocabulary in infants and toddlers, there's a searchable video link that will show and provide resources of how a high quality teacher in a Head Start center can role model that of how you interact with babies and toddlers, and lesson plan ideas, all of these things that are created by the federal government funds that you have access to at faith-based levels, as well as connecting you to the right people in your state. So I hope you'll take a moment to look at the professional development resources that are available to faith-based organizations right now, others on the call that are just interested in providing higher quality care that's available. So I also have a link in the PowerPoint to a recording of the webinar that we did earlier I guess it was last month now, on all of those resources available to you. So I think I'm going to stop there. I hope I've made the point that we would love more faith-based organizations to participate. I'm available to state administrators to help you do that. And Ben, I'm going to turn it back over to you, but thank you so much for inviting me and hosting this important webinar.
Dr. Todd-Smith, thank you so much for that helpful information, for that overview of how HHS, and specifically the Administration for Children and Families, is really, like I said, taking huge first steps, taking major leaps and bounds in really implementing the president's executive order and making sure that these educational freedom opportunities are really fleshed out into this early childhood education space. Just a few quick things that I've seen come up in the chat. People are asking, where can I get more information? How can I connect to some of these strategies? In the link in the chat, we've provided a link to your Child Care Development Fund directors at the state level. You can identify those, find your state, find some of those individuals who are implementing the resource, because all these awards go to the state level, and then the state coordinates those funds from there. So you want to look for your state coordinator for child care development funds. If you're looking for opportunities to connect to Head Start programs, you can connect to that Head Start collaboration office. Look for local Head Start programs in your community and think about ways you can partner there. And then lastly, you're providing links to the webinar that was really helpful in fleshing out some of these pieces of guidance that the Administration for Children and Families put forward. You'll have more information about some of those different programs, as well as other places where HHS and the Administration for Children and Families is putting this work into practice in other sources of federal funds. Clintandra just added the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's TANF, another one of those acronyms that Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith was talking about. And so you can think about some of the ways that this can be utilized, engaged, and what it means for your faith and community-based organization across the country. So thanks so much for looking through that, for Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith joining us today. On that webinar, I was actually able to join, and I was so honored to be there to participate and encourage the Child Care Development Fund administrators, Head Start programs, and other federal implementers of federal funds to think about the ways that faith and community-based groups can be part of these strategies. One of the entities that I mentioned are state faith and community-based offices, individuals just like us at the federal level who build partnerships and connections for state and local entities. And one of those programs is Rob Lawler. Rob serves as the Faith and Community-Based Services Coordinator in the state of Montana, coordinating with public health and human service entities. And Rob is doing exactly what we're talking about. He's working with faith and community-based organizations to build their capacity to participate in some of these federal funds at the state level, to build the capacity of faith and community-based providers to provide more childcare, especially focused, and he's focusing these efforts in communities that have a desert of childcare services. And thinking about how in many of these deserts, faith and community-based organizations are there and able to mobilize to address some of these needs. So I'm excited to turn the webinar over to Rob to talk about some of the ways he's doing this work, some of the things he's working on, as well as introducing an amazing faith-based organization that's taken him up on this offer and really jumping head and feet first into this work. So Rob, I'll turn it over to you, and then to introduce our Rio from the Salvation Army who's doing this work with you.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, my name is Rob Lawler. I'm here in beautiful Montana. Just really excited to be able to share with you. I'm going to give you a little background about what I was looking at a couple of years ago in relation to these childcare deserts. To give you an idea, we in our state are only meeting about 44% of the needed childcare for children under 6. across our state. To give you an idea of what that looks like, we only have about 13 counties of the 56 of our state that actually meet 50% or more. We have 4 whole counties that actually don't even have licensed childcare in them. Those are a little more of those pioneer rural type communities. But what we do have in those communities, and I'm working with, are churches. So hoping to change that number to not be 0 anymore. Have quite a few counties that are at that 10% or less. So basically, what I'm saying is they meet the need of Montanans and their need for childcare. They're only meeting like 10% or no percent. And across statewide, we're only at 44%. So what was the plan there? The plan really is to reach out to various organizations, primarily faith-based organizations. And I've kind of broke it into some groups that I thought were really good. One, churches, houses of worship. They generally run Sunday schools or VBS, camps. They're already used to working with children. They have space. Since many of our childcare centers or facilities programs are dependent on being able to rent a space and then get it licensed and go through all the state procedures there. I'm thinking churches. They're already in some cases steps ahead in that. Other thing that I've been really working on is many of our faith-based schools. We do not have school choice vouchers in Montana. It keeps going through legislature, but yet has not cleared the hurdle. But we do have a very strong grouping and participation in our faith-based schools. And they're running preschools and childcare. And so really just trying to tap into those. They're not tapping into these funds. They're just literally parents are paying out of their pocket when they could be potentially part of subsidies. And so we want to tap into that. Another is nonprofits where they're focusing on families or children. So one of those might be a ladies treatment center that we have in Missoula, who women are able to go get treatment and take their children with them. How are they able to do that? We are been talking with a couple of organizations that work with survivors of human trafficking. And so those are the kind of organizations that I've been working with. And what I've been focusing on is not just childcare, especially with our churches, but childcare in providing what I like to call a family-centered approach, where they're providing childcare, but also maybe presenting parenting classes, financial ed, addiction support, those kind of things that might go along with a family to really help support that. And so one of those organizations that I've been working with for a little while, and they have actually gone to great lengths to catch the vision by they're building a brand new building. They've moved in new leadership, and that's the Salvation Army in Bozeman. And the Salvation Army in Bozeman started out about 1.5 to 2 years ago, having this conversation. They came to me and said, hey, what do you see are the needs in our community? We're looking at building a new building. And I went, well, let's look at the stats, look at the different things. And we found out that Gallatin County, which is the county in which Bozeman lies, is only 62% meeting the need of childcare in the community. And that is one of our communities where many people from out of state move for work. And so they don't have familial supports when it comes to childcare. And in order to move that percentage in Gallatin County from, say, 62% to 70 or 75, or gosh, it'd be great to be 100%, it takes a lot of spaces. There's a lot of children. So anyhow, that's kind of where we're at. I'd like to introduce Major Rio Ray with the Salvation Army in Bozeman and let him just share a little bit about his experience and kind of his excitement. Now, I just have to preface, I think he's been there 7 days now. So, so he isn't like 100% up to speed, but Rio, if you could just share a little bit of some of your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Rob. So yeah, I have been in Bozeman now for 7 days, and I think I've been in the office for 3 days. So I have everything figured out with no problems about anything. My wife and I have been Salvation Army officers though for 22 years. Before that, we worked for the Salvation Army. So for the past 26 years, we've been involved with the Salvation Army and helping minister to people that are in need. As officers, we've been deployed into Fountain, Colorado. We've been for 5 years, Los Angeles for 5 years, Alaska for 4 years, and then for the last 8 years, we've been in Northern California, 50-50 split between Santa Rosa and Sacramento. Usually when you think about the Salvation Army, you think of shelters or family service offices that feed people, or you think of thrift stores. But the reality is that's a very limited view of what the Salvation Army does. And youth is always a priority of serving youth that are in needs. So in our 26 years, we've done tutoring programs. We've done boxing programs for gang prevention in Northern California, basketball programs, homeless youth outreach, troop programs, music programs, and daycare. Our last appointment in Sacramento, we had 250 kids per week on the campus involved with basketball, tutoring, daycare, and music programs. And so moving to Bozeman, we're very excited to be able to have this opportunity to launch a building that is going to be able to serve over 70 kids per week in Bozeman with daycare. And so that is really the vision that has been set forth by our advisory board and by Amber, and that we're kind of carrying forward. But that's what we want to do, is we want to serve those kids because it also serves those families. For those of you who don't know, 60% of low-income parents say that they've had to turn down work or have missed work, missed days or weeks because they don't have childcare for their children. The average cost of childcare is about $10,000 nationally. In Montana, though, I'm told that it's about $12,000 per kid, which is out of reach for a lot of low-income families. So that's what we want to target. We want to target low-income families that need this help, because we know by targeting that, 25% of those kids, by targeting that, 25% are more likely to graduate for high school, and 40% are less likely to need any special childhood or any special education by just having that early childhood education. $1 invested in early childhood care results in a return of $7 to $13 in long-term benefits for society. That means if I invest in a kid right now, that kid is less likely to be in trouble, to be homeless, to be in crime, because he has a firm foundation. More importantly, it's a safe space for parents to work and to rebuild their lives from. It's a chance for kids to develop language, social and emotional skills, and it's a way to break the cycle of poverty, not just for one child, but for the whole family. And in a faith-based setting, we get to add the extra things: hope, value, belonging, and the reminder to families that they are not alone. So in Bozeman, we have this awesome opportunity. Our thrift store closed during COVID and was not able to reopen. And so we have an opportunity for a new building, and we're designing that building around childcare so that we can meet the fill the gap that is taking place in Bozeman, and that we'll be able to serve the community and serve the families that are here. Our goal is not just to help families survive, but to really help them thrive and really make sure that every single child feels like they belong. And this is not just for the Salvation Army. This is not just for those of you who have a new building. I really want to just encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity, because all of this can help us impact the lives of the young people and make just a future generation that will thrive. And so very excited to be part of this, and feel very blessed that I got to talk. I am definitely the low person on the totem pole here, as all these high up and official people are speaking. I'm definitely the low man on the totem pole, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to be able to share with all of you. And Ben, thank you so much.
Rio, you might be the low man on the totem pole, but that's the base, right? And so I know you mentioned to us that your wife is running the food pantry right now. Our Salvation Armies and faith and community-based leaders are just so critical to serving the needs of so many in our communities. We're so appreciative of the work you all are doing. Thanks for taking the leap taking the leap with us on this call, taking a big first step in your first 3 days, but then also all the steps you're taking and taking advantage of this opportunity that we're making, that the administration, and being our example of what this can look like. Using these funds, setting up this process so that you can provide more childcare in your local community and really address this need that Rob pointed out, where so many people in Montana don't have these resources. It's going to make a huge difference there in your community. And you're giving us an example of what it can look like to step in and to take these big leaps, echoing the big leaps we're taking at the federal level. You all are taking that big leap in the local community. So we so appreciate you doing that. Let me invite you to stay on camera. Let me invite Rob, Laurie back on the camera as well to join us for some Q&A time that we have here at the end. I'm so appreciative of the questions that have come in and it's a part of this conversation and dynamic that we can have for where things are going. Let me take on the first question. One of the things that came in was whether or not this is open to all different types of faith communities. And we want to affirm and value that any faith community can jump into this conversation that wants to take advantage and participate in providing more childcare services in their local community, whether or not it's a mosque, whether or not it's a temple, whether or not it's a gurdwara out of the Sikh tradition. All of those communities can look at ways they can partner with their state, participate in these programs, and take advantage of some of these resources to provide these services. And so look at your state, look at your program, and see whether or not what opportunities might be available and how you can jump into these conversations and considerations. So we want to encourage all faith traditions and communities to participate in these programs and efforts. Dr. Todd-Smith, I want to come to you first. There was a great question, two different parts. One was asking more information about how these voucher systems work at the state level and if everybody has them and how those work and how different groups, how different states, even one program said, hey, I want to reach out to my Child Care Development Fund today and see what opportunities might be available. What are some things you would encourage them to look at? Some more information about those voucher programs, and I'm going to come to you with another question right after that.
That's too many questions. Sorry. No, just kidding. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's music to my ears that somebody wants to reach out already. And that is wonderful. I think in the PowerPoint or somewhere you've posted in the chat was the link to the CCDF webpage that has each state's contacts. So you need to reach out. Find that on the website. If you have any trouble, email one of us or whoever's contact info you have in this office. And or Ben, you could give me their contact info and I'll reach out however that's easiest. But you could reach out today and they could begin those conversations. But the way that and yes, every state has it, there's actually $12 billion a year that go out to the states to do what I described. So we're not talking about a little bit of money. We're talking about a lot of money. And in Mississippi, the way that it worked was because a family's income was one level, they could only get into Head Start. Because a family's income was a different level, they'd get into CCDF types of centers. And because you were middle or high income, the church programs and others seem to be higher quality and they paid for theirs. So the more faith-based organizations that decide to accept children's certificates, the better, and the more school choice that those families will have. And so that's something that can happen immediately. But the vouchers and the money that I talked about go out to based on your state's definition of poverty level, and the parents are required to work, and in turn they get this voucher to pay for their childcare so that they can be successful in working or doing job training. So it's a win-win for the parents and a win for the child, and a win-win-win, I'll say, if the faith-based organization chooses to participate as well. That just gives more and more children access to the most important time in their lives, the first 5 years of life, and even the wraparound services after school are so important. So I see someone's asking, how is this different from the subsidy? It is the same. I call it a subsidy, a voucher. It's money in the parent's hand, so to speak, that goes to a center of their choosing. So I hope that answered the question.
Thanks, Laurie. Yeah, that's super helpful for thinking through these different strategies. And then specifically how it worked in Mississippi, right? I think that in noting different states have different ways it works, right? And so each state is different. You want to look and make sure you're connecting to the effort coordinated in your state and how it might support it and facilitate it. Laurie, next question for you, and then I'm coming to Rob with the next question. Some people have asked questions about their quality systems, and we know that quality in childcare is such a really important consideration. We want to make sure these programs are as effective and strong as possible. You mentioned some of those professional development programs. Those are excellent to have to make sure that you're improving the quality of your program. But how does this work to engage faith-based groups connect to or coordinate with some of these quality-based systems like a QRS, the quality rating and improvement system in certain states, or other efforts that I know are underway to really strengthen the quality of childcare program in each state?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say this, quality rating systems have not been linked to higher student outcomes. High quality care is linked to student outcomes, but the systems in states has yet to been aligned with higher outcomes for children. So my office is doing a big deep dive into this and what does quality mean? I bet if I asked all four of us right now on the call, we'd all have different definitions of that. And kids don't benefit from a 1-star level of quality or a little bit of quality. They benefit if they get quality. And kids in childcare from low-income families, they need the higher quality more than anybody else. And so really trying to make that better nationwide is a huge priority for my office. But to answer your question, every state has some way of measuring quality that may be as basic as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, and others have really invested some great ways to do that. So I could link you, our office could link you to your state's quality improvement system, and those resources I mentioned are a good place to start. But states also have coaches that go out into the child care centers and sit side by side with a teacher. So that is available to faith-based programs as well when you participate in the QRIS system. So I'm happy to link you to your state QRIS, or you could word search it and probably pull that up from the state level. It's a little different in every state, but I would definitely tie into those resources. And once you agree to be part of CCDF, you would automatically be tied into the state systems for receiving those funds, because my office is the one that part of that 12 billion I mentioned is what goes to states, and they spend that on quality improvement. So happy to talk one-on-one with anyone else that might have a more specific question about that.
Thanks so much, Laurie. Yeah, and we want to encourage faith and community-based organizations, take advantage of these resources, take advantage of these strategies that will help strengthen the program. You can, leverage the professional training resources, a website we're going to send in the link. You can go and grab some of that training right now to strengthen your program in your local community, and think about ways that your program can benefit from these resources and trainings that can start to improve your quality right now in the summertime, right? Well, before we get back into the school season, think about some ways you can take advantage of those opportunities and strategies. Rob, our next question comes to you, and I really appreciate this question about how do you communicate to faith-based organizations that they don't have to change their mission, values, or identity to participate in the program? How do you let them know that that's okay for Rio to keep the faith components of their program that are so important to the values and the mission of the Salvation Army? And then Rio, I'd love for you to say a little bit more about how that relates to how you hear engagement from the state and why it's so important to hear someone appreciating and valuing that when they reach out to you. So Rob, can you address that, and then Rio come behind?
Yeah, actually, is a very big concern. So I did two things when starting this process. One, I went to all of our state leadership in childcare, our third-party support training partners that are contracted through the state, and one kind of explained and got them on board of what doing childcare and work with a faith-based organization would look like. Number one, they don't have to do this. They would choose to do this. So it's a little different than, say, maybe a few ladies who go and get a facility and they're like, hey, we're going to get into childcare because that's our profession. A church is a little different. The other thing I did is really understand how this works. Number one, the churches or faith-based organizations are literally providing a service that they get paid for. It's a little different than, say, getting a grant from a government entity or something like that. They're just one of other services out there. Some of our communities, they may be the only child care center. That's not their fault. But parents are able to choose. And in our state, literally the only thing that is expected of a faith-based organization is just let them know that you're a faith-based organization and you will be providing that faith-based maybe curriculum, especially as they get older, maybe in more of kind of a preschool type childcare. So that is literally, the state doesn't really care, long as they're meeting the requirements. And that's a lot of what I do with faith-based organization. Here's the safety requirements, here's the child to provider ratios, those kind of the basic stuff that becomes licensing, the training, those kind of things. As far as their mission and who they are, they just need to be who they are. And I always assure them that if nothing else, my office is here to help. And one of the things I've been doing is my commitment is I want to walk through faith-based organizations in this process, because I know that it's not kind of our standard of operation for, maybe decades of what we think of when we think of childcare. So that's kind of how I do that. And that was a great question. Thank you. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo off of that, how fantastic it is to have this type of funding available. I've literally had grants offered to me in the past where they said I had to remove all religious symbols from my building. And I've told them, I said, I can't take salvation out of the Salvation Army. There's always going to be part of that is there. So to have this funding available is so fantastic. It's such a great opportunity for any faith movement to be able to put their works into action and to be able to serve their community.
Can't take the salvation out of Salvation Army. That'll preach. Rio, Rob, thanks for that. Thanks for the ways in which you guys are modeling for us the ways this can look, and be strategic in ways. And then, Rob, I love your point. Walking alongside individuals, this is new. This might be different. We've got to think through some ways that we can facilitate this, and helping people feel comfortable, helping that trust level. Change happens at the speed of trust. And so we need to build those connections and relationships, and having individuals like Rob at the state level helps so much of these opportunities and changes to be realized, fleshed out, and made possible in communities and faith-based organizations. So lastly, wrap up. What would be one thing you'd want someone on the call who's thinking about participating in some of these programs to think about, to consider? Rio, I want to start with you. Kind of, what would you think are some key things to think about, to strategize around? Then Rob, and then Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, I'm going to have you have the last word of what we want faith groups to think about what would be the top most important things to be considering as you think about jumping into these conversations and considerations. Providing more childcare in local communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the first thing to do is, of course, look at what the needs of your community are. I think that you'll find that most communities are in need of this, but I think that's always a good first step. And I think a good second step is to, for us, Rob has been such a great resource for us to be able to reach out to and connect to and to talk to. So talk to your local representatives, talk to the people that are there, and then build the dream. The reality is, again, probably because I'm faith-based, but I really do believe that God will bring the right people into your lives that can help push this forward so that you can serve the community that you're in.
Rob?
Yeah, I would say, pretty much all faith houses of worship, faith groups have a mission to ultimately help whether it be the widows, the orphans, the community. And I would say these tools like this, and there's not just childcare, there's others out there, are a great way to make a change in your community. When we look at maybe Little House on the Prairie type view of our country, the church was the center of our communities, and it still is, whether we see it or not, we see people who are looking to the church. And so rather than, I guess, just Sunday or whatever time you meet, you can be relevant to your community all the days of the week, and really change families for the better. And we see it happen in Montana through various forms, and childcare is just one of those forms. So
Amazing, Rob. Thanks so much. Dr. Laurie Todd-Smith, we'll come to you for the last word. Key things for faith communities to think about as they think about jumping in and getting started and providing these services.
Yeah, I think all the answers have been just great so far. I was thinking about, obviously reaching out to your Human Services Department, CCDF would be step one, and understanding childcare licensing and all the things we've talked about might feel overwhelming, but the people in this business, as you've heard from the people on the call, have giant hearts, and they're going to walk you through these steps. And so, don't be overwhelmed by the process itself. And I think, at least in my 30 plus year career, I've always heard, well, I don't know about the federal government or the state government engaging at the church level. We're going to lose some of that freedom. I don't know that you could have higher people on a call like this telling you, yes, you can, and we will help you make. I mean, the head of the Montana Department of Health and Human Services and someone in the federal office here in Washington, D.C. are here cheering you on. So just know that lots of opportunity is out there, and hopefully there'll be more yeses than nos in your journey towards that.
Here, Dr. Todd-Smith. Thank you so much for that encouragement. Thank you for the leadership you're providing on this call and in this work to make it safe for these groups to participate. Rob, Rio, thanks for helping us see what this looks like at the state level and encouraging more faith and community-based groups to get involved, to take the plunge. And again, to echo those big steps that you can take in communities, it might feel like big steps. So that's what we do. We encourage big steps, big leaps of opportunity, and encouraging people to move forward in this work. We've seen some other questions. We're going to follow up with a lot of you to get some more answers and some links that are going to be helpful, strategies. And just know that you have partners in the federal government who are wanting to come alongside this work with you. Like Rob said, to have your community be just as important Monday through Saturday as it is on Sunday and Saturday and that weekend experience. So thanks so much for being with us, for catching a vision for what this could look like. We're going to be having more calls and conversations around this, highlighting how faith and community-based groups are jumping in and doing amazing work in their community. And so be sure to watch out, look at our website, hhs.gov/faith. Email us at faith@hhs.gov to let us know about how you're taking the plunge, how you're jumping into these conversations. And then we look forward to continuing to be in partnership, working and listening to what you're seeing and doing. If you're having challenges, if you're reaching out and not hearing back, let us know. We want to hear about some of those opportunities and make sure that we help support your local work in your community to be part of this conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today, for taking time. Thanks to our speakers for their amazing remarks. We look forward to continuing our conversation on our next webinar soon. Thanks so much and have an amazing day.